Hey there, boils and ghouls. Welcome to this week's episode of Hollow Weekly. And when I say this is a good one, boy, do I mean it. Look at the runtime of that. You know when it's over an hour that's a good conversation that's about to happen. And believe me, it is. We had our first in-person interview, socially distanced, of course, with writer-director Tommy McLaughlin, lead singer of this band, the Sloths. Also about 1,000 TV movies. That's not a lie. Writer of George and I's favorite episode, Come to the Head of the Class, Amazing Stories, Christopher Lloyd. Oh, you can watch it for free online on NBC's website. Go do it. And he wrote and directed a film that I think a lot of us probably have seen called Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. so we were excited for this episode. Also, want to give a quick shout out. Our Swiss listener, Michelle, who's actually not Swiss. I like to look at our stats and see where people listen to the show. and there's one listen in Switzerland. So I saw the review. Thank you so much. And now I was looking at the map. Where else do we have solo listeners? And next door, I believe, over in France, we have one listener. So if you're listening to this and you're over there in France, give us a 5-star review. Let us know how you've been. Si vous plaît. That's about the only French I know. I failed French in college. It was an immersion thing. I got lost very quick. But this episode with Tommy McLaughlin, even if you're not a horror fan, which I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you're not, just the sheer amount of Hollywood stories this guy has is through the roof. There's not one part of this episode you're not going to love. So sit back, enjoy it, and stick around for the end. We got a song handpicked from Tommy himself that I think you're going to dig. It's a really cool one. And the cover art, look up the cover art. It's beautiful.
So I'm not gonna postpone this. I got to do this right now because I am obsessed with. So how did you get involved with Amazing Stories and what? Because I think that show was basically, it's been sort of forgotten. It didn't. I loved the '80s Twilight Zone reboot. Actually, I thought it had a lot of strong work in it, but I felt like they were at the same time as Amazing Stories, and I feel like I still occasionally hear Twilight Zone get mentioned, but Amazing Stories not so much, except for now because of the recent I guess reboot or something that's happening.
Jordan Peele one.
But there were some amazing things in there. But yours, how did you get involved with this?
Well, I have to, give full credit to the great and powerful Mick Garris.
Okay.
He was involved with that, and Mick has always been, very generous with all of us in this industry. He's just, really, he loves, to share and get people involved in things that he's doing, whether it was Masters of Horror or obviously early on Amazing Stories. So, we, got together and collaborated on Go to the Head of the Class. And then I ended up getting another thing, what was that thing called? The Such Interesting Neighbors. Okay. And, the script ended up not being anything like what I wrote, but, it was still interesting. It was much more comical than what I intended with my draft. But, yeah, that was it. It was Mick sort of inviting me into the boat and saying, let's do this together. And it was fun because, I would write a scene, and he would write the next scene, and then we'd switch, send, the material to each other.
Oh, cool.
And then rewrite and send it back, so it was a really nice collaboration.
That's really cool. And then, because it felt like Amazing Stories there's this amazing moment in Autofocus where the agent goes to the guy playing Bob Crane, who and he's like, "Oh, it's a concentration camp comedy." He's like, "I'll never do this show," and the guy's like, "No, it's first class all the way. It's like Bing Crosby production." So Amazing Stories felt like that. Mm-hmm. It felt like bigger budget. Was it a different experience as TV went, or was it sort of?
Oh yeah, I mean that first season, all these heavy hitters, in there,
right.
Scorsese, one of my favorite episodes. What was that? Mirror, I think
Yep.
it was called. And I mean, there was just stuff that were, you didn't expect these guys to be doing television, but Steven's whole thing with the series, and the same thing with the others that I also worked on, with Mick, is that he would give it to the directors to do, and basically, I want to see what you guys come up with, and if it doesn't work, then, I'll get in the editing room and discuss it.
Right.
But obviously, that first season, there was a lot of money, so they, I think you could see by the time they got to, they get 3 seasons?
I think, I only know of 2, but there might have been 3.
It wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
It was not a lot.
But, you could see, the budgets were, getting cut down and down, and things were happening more in one or two locations, and didn't have quite the spectacle
budget
of the earlier
drained
ones.
out.
Which
should
is
have been
always
called
what
like
happens.
sort of great stories.
Yeah.
Season 2.
Pretty amazing story.
Decently
But yeah, it was still exciting because it was like a network show doing something that was definite throwback to the Twilight Zones and the night galleries and
Right.
all those great old horror anthologies.
Right. And what's super noticeable to me about Go to the Head Class was, and this same thing is going to happen with Friday 6, is that there's this element of humor in it, right? So the atmosphere, first of all, you are a killer, amazing at atmosphere. There are so many images from Sometimes They Come Back or Go to the Head Class or Jason Lives where all I see is leaves or rain or storm. It's like perfect, right, in my head. But there's also the humor. So did you have to fight to get humor into these things or not so much?
Not really, and again, you write the script, and then it becomes kind of everybody gets a chance to pee on the tree and mark the territory. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of got lost or changed or whatever. So nothing is ever exactly as intended, but the tone is very much the same.
Right.
And Zemeckis got in there, and he is like one of the best, and he found things that take it all another level, but it all kind of fell back into that universal horror movie type thing. And of course Christopher Lloyd was just so great. I mean, there were just so many things that I know both Mick and I were going, was that the one we wrote? Wow. Because it's nothing's better than handing somebody blueprints, and then suddenly you see the house and you go, that's I was the guy that did the blueprint too. So yeah, it's amazing. And it's also that frustration for a lot of writers. It's like, that wasn't what I wrote, but I'll be happy to take credit for it.
Right.
But it's it's really tough. The writing process to try to keep it pure, unless you also can direct it. And not to jump into Friday the 13th, but that was one of the great blessings. Is I had an executive producer, Frank Mancuso Jr., who basically let me do what I wanted to do. So what I wrote, I could get on the screen, and what I improvised on the set was the way that scene was going to go. So it's having that that wonderful golden ticket. Okay,
right.
Just make the movie you want to make.
We should jump to that because did you know the entire time, or was this something you gradually realized that you had that kind of control, or you knew from the jump?
Well, the interesting thing, and a lot of people, I think, probably know this. I mean, I initially did not want to have anything to do with like a slasher movie or because things had gotten so crazy in this industry that if you wanted to get a deal to make a horror movie, you basically needed to find a forest or some abandoned area, have something to cover the villain's face, and have girls that would get cut up.
Right.
If you had that formula, you could get a deal.
Right.
And if you could make it for $500,000, all the better. And I was going around with all these kind of gothic horror, things in my head. And One Dark Night, the first one I did, was obviously very much in that, Hammer, Edgar Allan Poe, Roger Corman, all those kinds of influences in there. And that was the sort of stuff I wanted to do. So I turned down a lot of the, slasher type, horror movies. Then I wrote Date with an Angel, and then that became my obsession. I wanted to get a winged angel on screen. I wanted to, have something that Frank Capra would love, and I was fortunate that I got to hook up with Capra, and he gave me notes and encouraged me at times where I think, this thing's never going to happen. And in the middle of all that came, the Friday the 13th thing.
Right.
So,
one of these things is not like the other.
Right. But I was very much, I have kind of a split brain with comedy and horror,
Right.
And when I can put them together, great. Other times it's like, no, this has got to be pedal to the metal horror, or this has got to be straight out comedy.
Right.
So when I met with Frank Mancuso Jr., I said, would you object to if I had a sense of humor with this? He goes, you're not going to make fun of Jason. I go, no. Jason remains the monster. And he said, look, what we need is somebody to come in here
James Bond.
and bring him back to life.
Right.
Basically we fucked up. We thought, part 5 was going to work and everybody was thinking it was going to be cool. And there are a lot of big fans to that. And,
Sure.
it works on its own terms, certainly. But at the end, when Tommy puts on the mask in front of the mirror, people were like, oh no, is he going to be Jason? And as a result, the box office on my Jason Lives, got hurt.
Yep.
Didn't help that we, were going up against Aliens 2 either during that time. So, I mean, it just kind of was where that happened, or why that happened. So I kind of went in with this, kind of like, if I can do it kind of the way I want to do it. And he goes, yeah, do a treatment. So I, ended up over at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, which is right next to, the lot at Paramount,
right.
and wrote this thing and handed it in, and they went, yeah, great, let's do it.
Wait,
so
back
I went
up.
right
That's
to
a
script.
perfect place to write
You wrote
a
it at
script.
Hollywood Forever?
Yes.
Under Joey Ramone's
That's
statue.
incredible. Oh, what atmosphere.
If you go on YouTube, and there's like I guess it's about 6-minute video in black and white called Legends Never Die, Hollywood Forever on YouTube. And it's me basically explaining how I wrote it, show you where I was doing it, how I did it all by hand, and then it leads into the mausoleum where, my future plans are.
Toss the script over the wall. There you are. Read that.
Amazing. I'm actually kind of intrigued what you said about the Hammer and the Gothic side of it. Because it's weird. So first of all, I don't know, maybe this is just my impression, I'm wrong, but I feel like you're amazing with vehicles. You're also good at killing cars. But like every time, like the trains, the car, and sometimes they come back, and it's a Beetle in Jason Lives, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Volkswagen Beetle.
That scene is absurdly genius. But anyway, so the cars or whatever, but if I was trying to design what the atmosphere of, so Hammer is like European castles, that kind of thing. What would American Hammer look like? It's an evil figure standing on an overturned RV on fire. That's like American Americana Gothic.
Yeah.
Like that shot is like it's American Hammer to me is how it feels, right?
Uh-huh.
So like the fact that you were working Gothic into it is really interesting because that. You don't think of that with a Friday the 13th movie necessarily, right? Are there more elements that are in there that you could pick out if you rewatch the movie? Or
God, that's that's for other people to sort of see. I mean, I just kind of put in that movie everything that I could think of that would be fun and entertaining to me, who loves horror,
right.
And making it mainly characters that you hopefully liked. So when they died, it was like, shit, I love that guy, as opposed to, yeah, kill that bitch, yeah, and that always kind of bothered me that, it was all about making people that you didn't like, and so it was no problem killing them.
Right.
But if it's all done with people that were sort of, good-hearted and also having a sense of humor about Jason, Jason's out there, and joking about it,
right.
And then it ain't funny no more at a certain point.
Right.
So I just tried to have that kind of, and it's weird to say, but that sort of 30s, 40s wise guy humor, which is, again, I got from Howard Hawks and Preston Sturges and, of course, Frank Capra, and kind of wove that in to, a lot of the, the Gothic horror things from, Hammer and basically all those Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe movies that Roger Corman did that I saw when I was like 12.
And the characters, they're so relatable that you actually do care. I was thinking about like the sheriff's daughter and when her friends, like that whole scene when you're first meeting people, whatever. Mm-hmm. There's that dialogue or whatever, but first of all, they feel real. They feel like they really would like each other and really would spar with each other a little bit. Yeah. Megan's she's really unpredictable, right? like which in a good way, right? So like you that kind of. One minute she's doing slapstick falls, and the next minute she's like taking charge of the whole thing. Like whatever you need, I'll get it for you. Yeah. Like that feels like a real human being, not like a page thing. But so you put the thought into I'm going to make these people real, so when I kill them,
you don't necessarily want to see them go. I mean, part of you is going, "Whoa, what an incredible kill!" Like the back bend on the sheriff. Oh. But then on the other hand, the man was going to throw himself into danger because his daughter was, going to get killed by this guy.
Right.
So he immediately, took action and paid for it. And a lot of the stuff along the way was that same kind of thing. Or my ex-wife Nancy in the mud puddle holding up the money in the American Express card. Here, don't kill me. Here's my. And then I had a pause after that happened when we were looking at the floating American Express card because I knew there'd be somebody in the audience that would go, "Don't leave home without it," and the whole audience would laugh. And this guy felt like he just made the greatest improv ever. But, I try to place those kinds of things in the movie because the audiences were so vocal in those days. They really did, converse with the screen, which is, I miss that.
Incredible to think about. I don't think I've ever thought about, like, from a writer-director's point of view, you're trying to evoke emotions in our audience, but to have something specifically interactive, like as a trap in there, like I know someone's going to shout this.
That's some Jordan level.
That's like 40 chess. That's like
40 chess. How do you balance humor and horror?
How do you?
I don't know. He's not prepared for this.
I have no idea because it has such a good pace to it. It's not like comedy. Like there's like a jazz like rhythm to it where it just feels right. Like nothing ever feels out of place with it.
Yeah, I think having studied Chaplin, Keaton, Harold Lloyd, Harry Langdon, the comedies, as I said, the 30s and 40s and stuff. You see these rhythms, that they perform at, and you also see how, there would be like some moment that was heartfelt, and then suddenly there would be some slapstick thing that would come. So your emotions are kind of going here, and then suddenly wham, and it's the element of surprise, what you don't expect, which really, is what makes people love something. It's like if you're going, I know what's going to happen. Yep, there it happened. It's not fun, which is what's so difficult about doing sequels, because you have to, in a sequel, somehow make it feel like it's in that universe, but not exactly what the original was like, and not go, way off onto another thing, like what happened with Halloween 3, is the audience like, where's Mike Myers?
Right.
And so, and as much as Tommy Waltz did a great job on that, people really wanted to see, Michael Myers. So there's that, and I see that happen all the time in franchise films where you try to go, way off, but trying to, basically put in moments where things seem like they're just getting a little romantic or a little tender, and then some comic thing happens or some horror thing happens. It really is just trying to, make you feel like you're going one way, and suddenly, wham, you go the other way. Or, the whole thing of setting up a gag and everybody's laughing, and suddenly it's not funny anymore,
Right.
that can happen.
Right.
So it's, and many times, you don't know until you test the film, to see how it went. And that was my big thing with Friday. It's like, I'm taking a big risk with the fan base on this, and I don't know if they're going to go for the comedy and all the rest of this. And Frank was going, don't worry, we're going to have a preview. We're going to bring them in. You'll see, So we had this preview at Paramount. They had people standing in line along Melrose from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 in the afternoon.
Wow.
Getting drunk, getting stoned, dropping acid or whatever they came into that theater, toasted, to the max. And as soon as the movie started, it was like a mob scene, and it did not stop. I couldn't hear one line of dialogue through the whole thing, and they were just reacting and so the roars would get louder or a little quieter. And so at the end of the thing, I went up to Frank and I go, I have no idea how the picture played. He goes, are you kidding? They loved it. And I go, really? And he goes, yeah, but we need 3 more kills. I said, how do you know that? And he goes, I just felt it. I just need 3 more.
Just the inner rhythm. The beat.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, I didn't do Jason's father, and that's where Martin the caretaker was going to be, his last scene. So I can kill him, I guess. And then why we do that, I'll introduce, 2 other characters that really aren't set up. They're just kind of, they're out in the, the woods there, and he's proposing to her, and they have a little sense of humor about the whole thing. So it was like, okay, we can shoot that, in Bronson, Park, and, get the 3 kills in. And then we made a couple of the other kills a little more elaborate, like when Sissy's head gets twisted, and it actually pulled, and you saw the neck stretch and then snap. And it was incredible effect.
Yeah.
But of course, the MPAA cut all that out. And God knows where those little trims are that you never found those. So it was, it was trying to just up the, the kill factor a little bit more, but everything else, pretty much stayed, as is.
I would love to have that brain, calculating that, in the film, 3 kills. That's
Yeah.
my number.
I need 3
I need 3 kills.
Yeah, I could
That feels
feel
right
it.
in my heart.
That's right in my heart.
We're gonna make that happen.
So I'm intrigued by. I heard somewhere that they were taking gore out of 7, but that the producers of Six wanted more, like you said, more kills and a little gorier, et cetera. Is that an accidental benefit of making it a little more comedic, that they're trying to put more kills in, or they just want kills and they wouldn't have mattered if you'd done a totally straight movie? They would have wanted to add gore anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember on Seven, John Buechler's, one that I know they got, I mean, really taken to task on the kills, because he's a makeup effects guy and he just went for it.
Right.
And Kane Hodder's whole approach was like this heavy breathing and grab somebody and,
Sure.
And of course, if you've seen Friday the Game, I mean, it's brutal, the violence in there. Even I'm going, holy shit, I mean, it's like you don't stop after the person's dead. You keep on whacking away and cut and put them in fire and cook the head for a while. And I mean, it was like intense. So when that whole period, the MPAA was coming after us like crazy, because somehow all the violence that was going on in the world was because these movies were out there affecting and corrupting. And so, we got taken to task. And the most interesting thing about mine, when I was getting, down to the 9th screening for the MPAA, they were picking on the sheriff backbend. And I'm going, what? I mean, there's not a drop of blood, nothing, and they go, well, it's a cumulative effect. By the time we get to there, it's so violent.
It's a cumulative effect.
So it's not about the gore,
Right.
They just felt that was, enough's enough.
Right.
So there, it was just this thing of trying to monitor us, morally somehow.
Well, you got them with the other thing you were talking about. You were talking about making you care about the characters. Because I remember the first time I saw Jason Lives, when it was wrapping up, I was like, someone tell her dad's dead.
Yeah.
Because I was worried about Megan. I was like, when is she going to get the news? Like, so you do care about him, but that was a particularly effective kill. I can see why it rattled him a little bit.
The MPAA has got to be real. Usually like when like preachers are like, they say like being gay is bad, and preachers are usually. I feel like the MPAA. I feel like they have walls made of human flesh. Like they're just like these huge fucking sickos. But they're like, no, the backbend's too much.
Yeah, it's like the strict teacher in school that when your class goes out, they open the drawer and have like women's panties and they breathe or something. It's like the ones that seem so straight-laced and strict all have these quirky little things that go on
totally
behind closed doors.
They're repelled by first, absolutely for sure.
But
the amazing Jason shot next to the sign of virtues listed.
Yeah.
What? How did you even think of that? And like, what was the thinking behind it?
Well, that I have to completely, hand over to Joe Garrity, who was the production designer. When he created that thing, all I wanted was, Camp Forest Green up there, and that's it. And he goes, a lot of these places, they have like little rules and, things that are important to remember if you're going to be at this camp.
Right.
So, he came up with all that stuff, and then I thought, okay, we got to have Jason, just slow down a bit so that we can see all this stuff as he's heading on in there.
Right.
So there was a lot of that sort of ironic, humor.
Yeah.
And trying to let the audience think, no, wait a minute, he's just burst into the girl's cabin and he's walking there and it looks like he's looking for the victim,
Right.
But in my mind, he's looking for Tommy. Where's Tommy hiding? And then he feels something and he focuses right in on, little Nancy Ann there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this, question, why doesn't he do anything? And
Right.
so many different great fan, theories about,
Sure.
what is that? Is it because he's relating back to when he was a boy and, did he have a crush on a little girl who looked like this? Or is it just that she's innocent that, he just finds that so fascinating?
Right.
You kind of can write whatever you want. I do have, a theory, and it will be something that will come back at some point when I get a chance to, do my sequel to this
Sure.
that I've written. So some of these questions I'm trying to see if I can answer, but in a different way.
Totally.
Like the whole Jason's father thing, I completely went different from what everybody thought. Oh, Jason's father's a guy, Elias, and he's this muscular guy, and he beat Jason, and he beat his mom and stuff. And I said, no, that's the man that the woman married. It's not Jason's father. No. Jason's father was the guy that I set up, in mine, which is a whole nother kind of a just pure evil, type character. So it's like we all mess with the storylines, and you can see trying to get a timeline through all these things and stuff, forget it. I mean, the masks always change. I mean, always there's something that everybody wants to go in there and, make it theirs in some way.
And that's why, like, there's the rarity of a Scream where you have someone kind of, piloting the ship all the way through each installment or whatever. If you don't have that, you're just not going to have that kind of continuity. It's impossible.
Yeah.
As much as you want it to be,
Yeah.
you're just not. That's not going to be there, which is interesting. And that's one of the things I loved about, like, the fact that not only did you care about, but there's real menace. There's a real edge in that whole. Not only him threatening the children, like, or that threatening presence with children that young, right? But also kind of almost the dismissive, like, humans are flies to Jason way. He's killing some of the people in this movie. Like, there's real menace in that, right? Which is what you need to balance, because if it's going to be comedic, you need something heavier, and that part is there. Which is why, like, the head-pushing destruction RV scene is so genius, right? Because it's like, you don't expect that. Like, what a horrible way to go.
You really left your imprint on the world.
You made your mark.
Yeah, I made your mark.
All right, so the Gravedigger. Tell me about the Gravedigger, because I'm a big Hamlet fan. I love when Gravediggers show up in movies.
The Martin the caretaker, you mean?
Sorry.
I mean, he was exactly what I was hoping I would find. Somebody that had this kind of gnarly voice, and Mike Haas and I, Haas is the one that I wrote One Dark Night with, and so I named Tommy's partner Haas as a tribute to him. But we used to work at this projection room on Sunset Boulevard, and there was a guy in there named Martin Nosek, and he's actually in One Dark Night as a caretaker of a cemetery. So I wanted to find somebody that was like that, and he was great.
Right.
And so the whole point was he's a guy that just was supposed to kind of take care of the grave here, and then he sees that somebody dug him up, and that it was going to be his job and stuff.
Sure.
But I had it then pay off at the end, when Mr. Voorhees comes in and he says, I've been taking care of him, just like you wanted me to and stuff.
Right.
And then the interesting thing is, for those of you out there that's seen Vengeance, the Friday the 13th fan film that they did, it opens with me and my Jason, CJ, who's playing Jason's father, and I'm the caretaker, Walt, and I'm saying to him, look, I've taken care of your graves, just like it,
Right.
So, they asked me, if, was it all right to take the Jason's father idea and run with it? I said, yeah, please do it. I'd love to see somebody do it. And it was just so much fun to do a scene with CJ, at the same time. It was just great. So they're doing a sequel. That thing was so successful that they're doing a sequel to it. So Walt the Gravedigger will be returning to Vengeance. Can't tell you what is going to happen, and maybe I really don't even know yet, but because they're spitballing some different ideas. But I just had a ball working with all these guys. They were just. They were so passionate about, the Fridays, and really wanted it to feel like mine, that look, that feeling from the 80s and all that stuff. And so, it was kind of a, honor to be on the set as an actor and not having to worry about all that other shit,
And if they want to shoot it remote, you could teach them.
Yeah, exactly.
We could speed up production on this.
What a relief not to have to. You're just there, just do the acting, and that's amazing. I'm intrigued by how much covering up of things is happening in Jason Lives. So they've renamed Crystal Lake, right? The caretaker is hiding the evidence of shenanigans with the grave, right?
Yep.
Like, I feel like there's a lot of enabling of Jason going on. Is this like, what was the thought behind the renaming and kind of that feeling of? How do you get, because it's a problem to solve, right? You have to realistically sort of make people believe that people are returning to this camp again.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly the thinking. I mean, I only saw part one, which I really liked. And the other ones all kind of came at a time when there was so many other imitations of it. And I just kind of like, I don't know, it just didn't, make me feel like I wanted to go and see them, because so many of them felt like they were just kind of redoing what was already there.
Right.
Now, when you look at the long run of the whole thing, the franchise, amazing. The fact that it just kept going so long, and even by the part 6, I was going, all right, this is what other franchises lasted this long? Oh, James Bond, great. So I'm going to do the Bond thing at the top. So there'd be that sense of humor right from the beginning. And the other thing was when I watched all the Friday the 13th back to back, because they had me go into a projection room at Paramount and just start at the beginning, go all the way to part 5.
Wow.
I was just, making notes and going, okay, what tracks, what doesn't track, what would make sense or not make sense. And I always tell people there's movie logic and then there's real logic. And lots of times you can get away with all kinds of shit, like the face into the side of the RV.
Right.
I mean, her face would crunch. It would not go. But, everybody buys that because it looks so cool and you kind of let go of it. But I kept thinking, all right, there's been all these killings and stuff. Would I ever let my kid go to Camp Crystal Lake? I mean, no. So the town basically did, what they thought was the smart thing. We'll just take Crystal Lake out of the equation. We'll say, I don't know, and let a few years go by, and this is Camp Forest Green, and no, nothing has gone wrong here.
Right.
And so that was sort of their way of kind of covering the past. But obviously this young generation, learned about that dark past, and so they keep bringing it up. Come on, Dad, everybody knows it's,
Sure.
Crystal Lake, or, or Tommy says that to him too. I think it was still, it was still Crystal Lake to him. And to me, that was part of it too, is the fire horse going back to the station, and it knows exactly where to go. And that's what Jason was doing, is heading right back to what he knew, from the past. So I was trying to somehow make some of the things more, at least in my head, a little more logical, and then take artistic license when I had to, in other places.
That's really interesting. Because, they're covering up, in some of the timelines, obviously it gets squishy there too, but they're also covering up the memory of Freddy Krueger. Like, you see horror having to do this a lot. I didn't think of it as like a filmmaker problem to solve. No. But I guess when you sit down and watch all of them in a row like you did, you're like, uh-oh. I wouldn't send my kids there, so got to figure this out. That's really
because the first, sort of like, kick your head back was, part 2, when suddenly, this little boy that looked so cool, and when it was such a shocker, in that kind of Carrie-esque, way, suddenly we jump and, now he's full-grown man, with a sack over his head, and yet why am I blanking on her name? Adrian, who did what?
Adrian King?
Adrian King, thank you. She's back, but she looks exactly the same, the age and everything. So you're going, okay, either she's aged really good or something has shifted here, and and people come up with all kinds of theories. And it was literally, they just wanted to make this guy scary. They didn't want to make a scary little kid. They wanted to, be a grown guy and have his, to me, it was like the Elephant Man. That's all that I thought of when I first saw it. Is,
no kidding.
Kind of a, borrowing from that.
Right.
And to me, that was like, okay, it kind of worked on its own level, but it was, that timeline thing just never really could make sense.
Totally.
But then once, obviously, the joke with the hockey mask, and then it stuck, and it kind of became now the iconic image of horror.
Right.
And you just have to. I was watching, when we used to be able to go to movies, the thing on AMC theater chain, and they would have all these different kind of images come up, and the one for horror was the Jason mask, and it just is sort of, representative.
Well,
now.
you called it from by relating it to James Bond. It's one of the very few icons where you just need a silhouette or a shape, and it's everything you need to know right there.
Freddy's hand, those 80s monsters were great, and I think the whole generation now kind of looks back and goes, why don't we have ones like that?
Right.
Well, Pennywise now coming on the big screen has kind of fulfilled that, and there's, we'll see in time, how long they survive.
We've had this discussion many times.
Yeah.
My most recent icon, that because I loved the movie and it emotionally impacted me, actually, which is weird, but is Black Phillip from The Witch. That was the last image where I was like, this is, Sam from
Sam
Trick or Treat
Sam would be like the last pro. I always judge by how much like cheap merchandise comes out during Halloween, where they can just mass produce it. And in fact, this year, Spirit Halloween, there was like Sam mugs,
Right.
and I'm like, he's made it.
Right.
Yeah.
he's
Right.
it.
No one's come to my door asking for candy dressed as a goat yet. So
Not yet. There'll be one person. And you don't give them candy. You just give them butter. Just a ton of butter. Yeah, they'll get it. They'll love it. Their parents will be pissed.
Here's a salt lick or something. You're this is the part of the where we're talking to you where you're just going to correct me because I have a feeling you're the only person who's done certain things. I don't think anyone else has read books in an attempt to defeat Jason, right? But I feel like Tommy is pulling out tomes in this.
Yeah.
Like he's got an occult book. He's got
Yeah.
the
looks like a
Dead Will
necromancer.
Rise book, right? Like I've never seen anyone study to beat Jason, so I thought that was unique. I think you're the only one who's poured beer on Jason, or maybe you didn't.
Yeah,
Maybe.
well, it's actually, like Diet Coke or something, or
Yeah.
something that looked like it was supposed to be that.
Right,
But, yeah,
right.
it was like soft drink.
And I don't know if we didn't see it hit him, so I don't know if it hit him, but maybe, hopefully it did. I think you're the only person who poured beer on Jason. That's young kids. I don't
Yeah,
think they've
little
been
kids, no,
menaced
no,
by,
that
right?
didn't happen.
So that was I mean, there are a lot of firsts involved here that I just find fascinating. And then my contention is that Ron's character from the beginning is the smartest character in the entire timeline. Like he was right the entire through the whole thing. Like he was really like he had this figured out. He had it clocked. He knew it was wrong. The only bad thing he did was go.
Yeah,
Other than that, he kind of was in the
had it all there.
in the knowing of. Are there other firsts? Are there other things where you're like, I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to be the only one that pulls this off for this?
Well, I guess what I've answered before is I wanted to put a car chase in there because there hadn't been one of those, and then I got, well, I don't want to just do it normal. Let's have her drive in reverse, and see if we can get away with that. And if I'm not getting away with that, then Tommy's going to be down on her lap and going in and out, down there.
You put it in reverse. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I want to see your French connection. This is gonna be amazing. Okay.
And and then of course had the sense, the humor aspect of, she goes, oh, this is going to be a hairy turn, and he's down
Right,
on her
right.
lap, and I mean, bad sophomoric jokes, but to me it was like trying to have fun with this whole idea that it was something a little different. Then of course the big thing was the underwater fight. Because that was very difficult to pull off. We had to shoot it at the actual lake. We had to shoot at USC in the big Olympic pool to do, the actual, fighting and the stuff underwater there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it came to the problem that we had to grind up his head.
Right.
Of course, USC was like, no way you're going to put that in gut. So I make a phone call to my dad, and I said, is there any chance we could use the pool? And he goes, yeah, come on. My dad was a USC film grad, back in '49. So he loved that the film crew were in the backyard, and he was out there with his little, Instamatic camera taking pictures and stuff. So he didn't care that the whole filter got fucked up with Jason Brains and, So it was a challenging thing to kind of, pull off.
Sure.
But yeah, the interesting thing too about you brought about, reading about how to do this is that I always feel like it's so easy for people to go, well, in ghost stories, they always have to be buried. They'll go back, like poltergeist. You have to go back.
Sure.
You can't just take the headstones. If they're down there, they're going to be unrested.
Right.
So I wanted Tommy to just quickly go, all right, this isn't right. This shouldn't happen. You can't bring a human back to back to life with a lightning bolt,
Right.
all the stuff. So he goes into the occult study and sees this thing about returning somebody to where they died originally,
Right.
And I thought rather than getting back in the grave, put him where he's supposed to be, back at the bottom of
Where it's the
Crystal Lake.
hardest possible thing to shoot. That's
But it was, so that kind of, I guess, created a first. But I was looking for just things that felt to me like they hadn't done this, and this is sort of cool. This is kind of pushing the edge of the
Yeah.
envelope a little bit. But again, I didn't know if people were going to buy it. I didn't know if
Right.
there, the humorous aspect of it was going to, actually play off. But, much to my shock, here we are 34 years later, something, and
Right.
people are still going, yeah, it's my favorite. That was the first one I saw and stuff,
Yeah.
and because they discovered this stuff on
and
VHS.
it's completely unique in the timeline. Like it's my favorite of the franchise, but it's also just like we do this a lot on the podcast where one of my weird ways to judge stuff like this is if I remember it. I just have a terrible memory, but I get a really vivid memory for visuals or things that I really enjoy. I can even remember like the weather or the date, like stuff like it's weird, but like the visuals from this movie are just burned in my brain compared to a lot of the franchises where and a lot of them have all their own greatnesses and stuff, but like I can picture 2 images from Takes Manhattan, like tops. Right? So that part amazes me.
Well, I also came from the school of, you paint with light. You don't just light the thing and then, let the gore or let the comedy play. Do something with it so you're creating a tone and there's something in the shadows that you sense, but you don't necessarily see. And so, John Cranhouse was great, doing exactly the kind of stuff that I wanted, and give him full credit because he had the light, he had to pull it off, and so it does make a difference though if you're going in saying this has got to look like it was painted, not like it was.
Was
just
he doing all the light changes on Jason's mask when he was hovering over the kid?
Yeah, everything, and of course the grip and the gaffers and everybody were working on stuff, whether it was shadows of branches or the big, the huge arc lights that we were lighting the forest with, where some guy had to stand up there all night long and keep trimming those things, keep burning the carbon up there so those things would light. So that was like good old days of filmmaking.
That reminds me of we watched, who was it, Anna Wintour documentary, and she would look at a piece of clothing and she would always talk about texture. It has the texture of this, the texture of that, and I think with like Coming to the Head of the Class and Jason Lives, they have that texture. So it's never like some films just have, I don't want to call it like a boring look because nothing has like a truly boring look, but it has like a flat look, whereas this like you can hear, like you can feel the rain, you can smell the rain, you can feel the wind, like it has that texture, and like I think pulling that off is like it's a pretty goddamn hard skill to knock out. Like, not a lot of people can do that.
Right, and being brave enough to throw things in there and not knowing how the audience is going to take it. Like throwing those Hammer grace notes in where Tommy's doing like Van Helsing research. Like where do you ever see this in a Friday movie? Like that's kind of amazing. And not how is the audience going to take this? Like you don't know. I find that.
Yeah, I just always get bugged when it's like, how did that guy know that? What's in his background where he suddenly understood this sort of mythology or whatever? But if you see him, he's got 3 books and he opens the first one, bam, cut out. Did he read, speed read the other ones? Did he find what he needed on that first one? We don't know. I don't care. As long as I can say to the audience, he got this information from someplace, didn't just, born with it.
Right.
So, those kinds of things, as I said, for me, I always want to somehow justify, a character's understanding about something.
It's so satisfying too.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that, that's the first thing you mention when you walk out of the film is, well, how did this guy know that? How did this guy know this? But when you get those little bits of information, you're like, okay, yeah, no, makes sense.
Well, that explains that. Or that's all I needed. Or even subconsciously, you just don't bump on it, and then it's a smooth ride, whereas other ones, you bump on things, but you don't even know why, and you walk out not satisfied because you were like bumping on the...
You mentioned a good thing, too, about the texture of a film, because that is a real big thing for filmmakers to try to have that feeling that you can, feel, smell, almost taste certain things.
Sure.
And last night, I saw and blessed the release of the Blu-ray version of Jason Lives. The thing that Shout Factory's doing, and the producer sent me the thing and first off he showed me the Paramount one and then what they did, and I went, no, the color and neither of those are quite right, and gave a couple of notes, and then I got a copy of it last night, and I went, this is the most perfect it's ever looked and felt. So, those of you out there that end up having to, put out, I don't know how much they're charging for that box set, 150 or something. There is so much stuff. There must be 12 commentaries running through the film at any given time. You can hear from, CJ, you can hear from Vinny Gustafaro. I think 2 or 3 of them are mine. Right. And all this stuff. And then I just did a new interview, from the cemetery or from the mausoleum where my crypt is, and as well as that thing I mentioned, Legends Never Die, Hollywood Forever. That is going to be in there as well. Plus just a shitload of other stuff on all the movies. So it's
awesome.
quite a thing for the fans who haven't had a new Friday
Right.
in 10 years. At least this is something to look forward to.
When does this? Do you know the
October.
approximate?
October.
Of
Yeah.
course. Obviously.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm gonna be sitting here watching this when someone dressed as a goat comes and asks for candy at the door.
That'll be perfect. That'll be
Yeah,
perfect.
hopefully you're right that somebody will show up at the door.
That's very true.
Yeah, true.
I'm terrified. This is, I finally got a house in Burbank, the
Yeah.
neighborhood, and they go, wait till you see Halloween, hundreds of kids, and I'm going, great, I can put on a whole show again like I love to do and stuff. But then, this fucking virus, I could see parents going, no, we got to sanitize every piece of candy that's put in
Yeah.
the thing. I mean,
Yeah.
we're in
That
dog
reminds
shit
me
right
of
now.
Emily Catalano, the stand-up comedian. She was doing a joke where she was like, I was deciding, am I going to continue with a stand-up comedy career? And I asked Guy, like, give me a sign. And then, the COVID thing happened, and all my shows have been canceled. So God must be too busy to give me a sign. So I'll just wait. He moves there. He's like ready for Halloween. I'm like, okay, that's
Burbank is pretty wicked during Halloween
It
time.
is.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually.
Well, Glendale is too. I mean, when I lived here, there would be buses on Kenneth Road, that
where
would
it
show
goes
up,
crazy.
and all these kids, would come out and into the neighborhood. No parents, no nothing. Hundreds of kids,
Right.
roaming the streets. It was special. And in those days too, I was friends with Valerie Bertinelli, who I was doing TV movies with, and Eddie Van Halen. So Little Wolfie, I think he's got his first album coming out. His first trick or treating was in the Glendale neighborhood.
Wow.
And you can't imagine the faces of the parents. They'd open the door and trick or treat, and they're feeding the kids the candy, and they look up and they see Valerie Bertinelli and Eddie Van Halen, and it's like those aren't masks. That's the real article. It was just great to go trick or treating with them.
That is amazing.
Do you usually go crazy with you say you put on a show, like what do you
Yeah.
mean, like what kind of show, like what does that mean, like during Halloween, like you have like a big,
There were years where my good friend Stephen Banks' brother Alan would spend a month constructing these mazes at his place that were so elaborate, these walk-through things that would go in through the house and out the backyard and through the garage. And they were long, and they would get all of us in costumes and things. And there would be, lines down the block of that, people would come every year to see, that show, including Eddie and Valerie. And then as the years went on, it just got to be so much work that everybody started kind of putting on their own thing. So, I have Jason's coffin, so I would drag that out and put somebody in there,
Right.
fog machines, light the place up. It's all kind of, very low budget. But, for little kids, it was like, they were terrified. And for the ones who knew what these different things were,
Right.
it was a very cool thing.
That's
so I was planning on coming up with some big thing to do in Burbank, but I guess I'm going to have to wait till next year.
Yeah.
my feeling is everyone next year has no excuse. You've had a whole year. It better be the most elaborate.
And the other thing is, it's going to be totally nuts because you're going to have 2 years of pent up wanting to have done this party thing. Like, It's going to be nuts.
It's going to be a while.
Which would be kind of cool.
Well, what's interesting is we were talking about like the humor and how we care about the characters in Jason Lives, and the only other Jason film I think I really cared about some of the characters was Jason X. And I think the thread through that though is the humor. And do you think humor helps us care about the characters more?
Yeah, I mean, I learned that from both Chaplin and, going back, Frank Capra too. If you laugh, you like. If somebody can make you laugh, it's like, that's great. And I mean, that with friendships and stuff, who do you want to be around? The people that make you laugh,
Right.
And there's something about that. So you try to translate that onto the screen in some way that they either say something witty or they're just one of these people that just have such a, humility about them that you go, oh, God, I wish I was like that. Or,
Right.
man, my ex-boyfriend used to be like that, and I miss that than this guy that beats the shit out of me. There's some qualities that some actors have that they're just likable. They don't have to do much of anything.
Yeah.
And then there's other times that you just want to make them just a little smarter, a little more witty than we are in life. That it's like, God, I wish I could come back with that kind of thing like he did just then.
Right.
So the humor comes from those types of things, so that you do sort of go, oh yeah, I want to hang with them. I don't want to see
Right.
them gone now. I enjoyed
Right.
them in the movie.
And it gets across so much with so little. That because there's a surprising amount of brutality and like authenticity and dark themed stuffs in Capra, in like
Oh, yeah.
Safety Last. Are you kidding me? Like a quarter of that's
Yeah,
a whole.
I mean, It's a Wonderful Life is about suicide,
Right.
the gate,
Right, it's totally true. And then Buster Keaton, or if you're watching Chaplin, you're watching Modern Times. He's getting eaten by gears. He's getting tortured by his boss. Like, this is not. They weren't pulling a lot of punches. It just feels like that to a modern audience because it looks old timey. But it was actually rougher than. I mean, they were doing their own stunts like a lot of times. Like that was a real.
Oh yeah,
thing.
I mean, because you didn't, obviously CGI and all these other ways of, getting out of situations.
Right.
You couldn't. You had to just do it. The Keystone Cops, they would be breaking bones and permanently, hurting themselves, doing those crazy things that they did.
Right.
But it was like, hey, sure, for the movies, yeah, are going to last forever on film, sure. So yeah, didn't care about safety.
What this I'm intrigued by this. What is the what's an unexpected, truly unexpected influence on horror movies from someone who's out of horror movies? Have you talked to other directors where they're like, "Oh, Capra is the one," or Orson Welles did this, or like, what's an influence outside horror that influences horror?
Boy, you'd have to ask the other guys, pretty much.
For you, it's Capra, Chaplin.
Yeah, it's like trying. I mean, here it is, kind of in a nutshell. Where's the humanity? Where's
Yeah.
the love? And as much as that sounds, corny, it's like that. You got to have that relatability, so that when you're
Right.
looking at somebody, it's like, I get them, and you want to find actors who, if you've written it, or you obviously know the part well enough as the director, that you cast the right person that can, I mean, that's 95% of having a good actor is the casting. You
Right.
get somebody who just dead on knows how to do that, and it makes the job, so much easier. Then if you can kind of push them a little bit, it's like, well, I don't do comedy very well. Go, sure you do. Just say this without, any sense of humor about it or whatever. We're all gonna die. And it, you can get a laugh.
Right.
I mean, and
Right.
it's just just flat. Just make it so you try to find those people that are smart enough they can kind of understand those directions, but there's something about them that you just inherently love. And then you give a kind of a wise ass thing to a kid, like in Jason, so who were you going to be when you grew up? I mean, something like that always gets, a huge laugh, because
yeah, totally.
he was the kid that didn't say anything, while his brother was the one that was, always saying,
Right.
we're dead meat or all this stuff. And finally, the little one pipes in with that, and then he, and the older one does an intended Little Rascals, click of the head and turn, like a dough, And I mean, again, that's borrowing from, the
Yeah.
Hal Roach comedies, that time. And all that stuff is just sort of like in me.
Right.
So it kind of comes out naturally. But the other, directors, I mean, certain people just, they love David Lean like Spielberg did. So you get these epic, moving, incredible camera work kinds of things.
Sure.
And somebody else, it's like, what Cronenberg's influences must have been with the medical things and all that stuff. And Wes Craven, I was very fortunate with the Masters of Horror that one night sit next to him and just talk about what he wanted to do and what I did. And, and then at one point he goes, I want to have your career. And I go, no fucking way. Are you kidding? Doing TV movies and all this stuff. He said, look at all the different genres you got to do. Right. I had to do Freddy,
Right.
and anything, and then Scream,
Right.
and anything else they didn't want to hear from.
And you could feel it. He would bust out a red eye, and
Yeah.
the fans would shrug, unfortunately.
And it was great. It was great.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But it's like I never thought of it that way. I mean, it's like I said, your name above the title. I mean, like John Carpenter, Wes
Right.
Craven and stuff.
Right.
And he goes, yeah, but artistically, I'd like to be able to, have somebody pay for me doing things that I want to try,
Right.
and do. And that was the one advantage about doing all these TV movies and cable movies that I did, is every time the next one came along, I just chose a different genre, from true crime to a Christmas movie, to a psychological thriller, to some, just strange character relationship piece. So I got a chance to try a whole bunch of different things, because I always felt, as an artist and as a filmmaker, you want to go in with these challenges. Don't take the easy way. It's like, every movie I do it like this. To me, there's no pushing yourself, unless you get to do that.
Well, what an advantage for teaching as well, to have experienced all the other genres.
What was the hardest one?
Of
The
all
hardest challenge. Yeah, the hardest challenge.
Oh, God. Well, there was a couple of things that ended up, coming out, much better than I expected. I did this movie in, God, I can't remember the year now, but we shot it in North Carolina, and it basically was a true crime about the William Peterson character, and Treat Williams played, and it was just really difficult through the whole process. He had a way he wanted to do it. I had a way I was doing it, and we kind of, were always banging heads, and I didn't know what we were going to get at the end of the day. But when it all came together, he gave an amazing performance. It all kind of worked. So there's that kind of difficulty that can, sometimes happen, just in terms of people on a different page than you are, and. God, I can name a bunch of people, but it's sort of like, I don't want to say that they, were really difficult. They just,
right.
They were thinking differently,
Right.
And I've had people like, I was supposed to, this would have been a great war story had it happened, but I refused doing any more TV movies at a certain point in my career. I said, that's it, I'm done, and I had to leave CAA to make my point, and went with William Morris Agency, because they said, look, we're going to work on your director's career, they're going to make something happen. And of course I sat there for a year, nothing happened. And then finally I got a call from the guy, Steve Glick, in the television area, and he goes, I know you don't want to do TV movies and all that stuff. Would you want to direct a movie with Marlon Brando? Excuse me? And he goes, no, seriously, he saw some of your work. He's got a movie he wants to do. It's for television. He would like you to go over to his house and guys meet and talk, if you want to do that. And I went, I want to take that meeting. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
And it was like, 3 hours with Colonel Kurtz or The Godfather,
Wow.
just here, have some more sushi. Have some sushi there. Come on, you skinny kid. Let's eat. And just, he was a genius in that his brain would take you from place to place to place. You would ask a question, and he would just go off on all these other tangents, but then get back to the answer,
Right.
It was just amazing. And at a certain point, he suddenly decided that he wanted to switch roles so that he wasn't playing the father, he was playing the younger character. Mm-hmm. And I want him on the back of a motorcycle throwing toilet paper to the pool. And of course CBS went, nope, so that was it. And we were already like in Toronto, we were scouting locations, everything was happening, and suddenly we lost Brando. So the next person in line that they were, open to was Donald Sutherland. Mm-hmm. And I've loved his work and stuff. I had no idea of, what kind of person he was, because I heard that he could be difficult. Mm-hmm. But the exact opposite was true. I mean, we got together for dinner every night, talked about the next day's work. He would try something on the set. I'd go, great, how about if we do this? We'd still be up there doing takes of stuff. Wow. He was just so creative. And you just had to follow his rules, which was nobody smoking. He doesn't want to smell it on the clothes that you went outside and had a cigarette. Okay. If he was in a hotel room where people smoked, they'd have to repaint it. Right. That was like one of his big things. He wanted the camera to never be, lower than where, eye level is with him, because he just didn't like that low angle, look with it, and certain types of lenses. He didn't want anything wider than a 50. Right. And if you maintain that, he was incredible, and it was just one of those great, things. And I thought, this could be a difficult picture. And I had a whole bunch of mentally challenged people because he ran a mentally challenged place. And I said, no, I want to have the real people in there.
Right.
So we had all these people that had no idea how they were going to be, but they were incredible, you know. And the crew picture was just great because it's the crew mixed in with all these other people with Downs and all these things. And I thought that was a family. I mean, that was a totally unique family. So every so often things that you think are going to be difficult, you know, end up being a real blessing.
I love that it starts with Marlon Brando and he leaves and someone else comes in. You're like, uh-oh, this is going to be difficult. That's an amazing like plot twist.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's not that difficult. He's got 3 rules. You follow them and everything's fine. He's a great collaborator.
But, you know, I did my homework on Brando too. I got in touch with every director, you know, that was still alive that he had worked with. And everybody told me the same thing. You know, go, run, don't walk away from this. He will pick on you. He will find stuff in your past that he'll bring up in front of the crew. He will tear you apart. He hates directors other than Kazan. You know, Kazan's, you know, on a pedestal still. But everybody else, you know, don't tell me what to do. You know, and he would never learn his lines. You know, like obviously in The Godfather, he had cue cards all over the place. But then he got into this thing of having an ear monitor in his ear, and he had somebody off camera, you know, reading his lines as the other actor was talking. So he wasn't really listening. He was listening to what was coming in on the earphones. Jesus. And Donald Sutherland said to me, you know, that he had done a movie with him, and he goes, it was so difficult because his hearing was starting to go, so they had to turn the monitor up. So you're giving your line, and all you hear is somebody saying his line, answering what you're asking as you're asking. He said it was
That's
just
impossible.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But he had just basically burned up all his ability to kind of reach inside of himself and pull out his pain and use it. You know, father-mother relationships, you know, women relationships, whatever. Yeah. So he wanted to just have that sense of it just happening at the moment. You know, so I hear it and I respond. That's it.
It's also
a
little lazy.
Yeah, and he also loved props. You know, he was a very much, you know, you know, like, you know, well, he was like these nail clippers, and so the whole scene I'm going to just be clipping my nails. And I mean, he, you know, he wanted to like focus in on something other than the acting. You know, that was, you know, he was in a whole nother.
That's so weird that he became so loathing of. I saw an interview with him with Dick Cavett. And it was awkward. It was uncomfortable to watch because you can tell that you have someone who, Dick Cavett's not just an enthusiast about cinema, but like all things that he thinks are excellent. Like he's a great interviewer, and he's just ready to like catch fire with you. And he's like acting whatever, and he's like acting's bullshit.
Yeah.
like whatever. And you're like, wait, what? And you could see almost the disappointment like settle over him. And I know he wasn't always like that, but like after he clicked over to that.
Yeah, well, it happened just before The Godfather, because nobody wanted him in that Godfather in Paramount at all. Francis really had to fight for him, and then he had to put up with all this shit. And then by the time they got to, you know, Apocalypse, now he wished to God he never met the man, because he went days and days and days behind, because Brando just didn't want to do what the script was. He wanted to come up with something else. So, you know, but he... You know, as he said to me, you know, it's like I got to pay for all these fucking divorces, and I got an island that I got to pay for, and you know, so $1 million, you know, a week. That was it. Whether he was late, you know, or not, you know, that was it. You get $1 million, and you know, this producer I had was willing to pay that. You know,
and he's not even really trying. It's like the world's most expensive cameo.
I would have done it for $200. Get out of here.
There's a great. We had done an episode on horror documentaries, and there's the Island of Lost Souls. I think it's called. It's about Richard Stanley.
On Dr. Moreau. With him. Yeah,
exactly. And just the behind the scenes is literally frightening. It's like he's psychologically torturing people who are not ready for it because they're not even integral to what's happening. They're not the director. They're like lower. He's punching down, and it made me like, what are you doing? Because you're such a great artist. Like, why, you know, behave? Is it standard practice to when you have an actor of like a high level to just call director all around and just be like, tell me about like what it's like to work with this person? Is that or is that what you do, or is that what a lot of people?
You mean
do?
Talking about somebody who's like a superstar? How to
well,
react?
exactly.
Well, the ones that are really great, like I got to direct Lucille Ball, I got to direct, Freddie Prinze, and who was just wonderful, and Carol Burnett when I was doing the Dick Van Dyke Show with the comedies and stuff, and obviously Donald Sutherland, was like that. The ones that are really good, and Martin Landau, love this man, just incredible. Basically you could give the most bonehead directing note to somebody like Martin Landau, and you go, okay, that's good. And he would just change it into what, the way he understood how to do the moment. Right. Not necessarily what you were doing, but he would just, if you said to him, Marty, just faster. Right. So then he has to figure out, okay, why would this guy talk faster? He can't just talk faster to talk faster. There's got to be something. But he had the craft to be able to do that. Wow. And a lot of the pros are like that. It's like, very, very seldom does Spielberg and Woody Allen, all these people actually talk to these actors about the role. Right. They cast them because they knew they could do it, and they're going to bring something. And if it's not quite working, he'll go in and, ask a question, and then the actor will, okay, I can see what you're saying. Okay, and that's usually the way it happens. It's the ones that kind of get famous too fast, and they haven't really got a craft yet, and so there's that insecurity. I mean, nobody is more insecure than actors. Why? Not because they're assholes or anything. It's like it is so hard to do what they do. Yep. A grip comes over and he puts up a stand and raises a thing. And it's like, there's work involved, there's patience, there's all that stuff. But an actor, it's like, you do this scene and you think you've just, really just exposed yourself and all that, and somebody goes over and says, let's do that same thing exactly like that. One more. Right. Why? Didn't that last one work? Oh, it was great. It's great. We're going to use it. But let's just do one more. And they go, why do one more? If you did, it's like, okay, let me see, and yet they got to try to find a way to get back to that moment, that reality with 80 people watching, and all it is a hard friggin' job. Yeah. So what do? They pick on their motor homes not being big enough. They pick on the fact that why is he getting served first? Why am I not getting, all this stuff that you think they're just such babies, but it's this insecurity that, unfortunately is in the very job.
Yeah, it's built into it. I saw a making of documentary of Basic Instinct, and it was the first time I saw the screen test that Sharon Stone did. And when you see her have to do that character, but like just in a room, in a chair, with like people dead staring her in the face, and you're like, how do you even do that? Because there's moments in the scene where it's a stare down, and it's so uncomfortable, right? And they can just do it's pretty remarkable that they can do it.
Sharon Stone auditioned for me for One Dark Night for the blonde girl that was in there. I have no recollection of it. I happened to see, the casting sheet of all the people that, I saw that my friend Mike Hawes kept. And I went, Sharon Stone came in? Oh my God, and that happens, then they're starting early in their career. Sure. David Duchovny came in for my Date with an Angel movie, and I loved his humor and stuff, but it wasn't just quite right. It was a little too smart ass, which is what he does so well. Totally. So there's these times where you see people, early on and have no idea. Hilary Swank was another one that we had on this series, and they told me, you're going to love this girl. She was in the next Karate Kid. She's really great. And I go, well, that doesn't mean anything to me, the next Karate Kid. And she came in and she wasn't that good. She, she was just kind of okay. And the casting director said, look, she can be better than that. Give her some notes, let her come back in. And I go, well, I really like Janet Elfman because I thought she was really funny. And it's like, she's great. We can go with her, but just give Hilary a second chance. All right. So, Hilary comes in, having, got the notes, getting the part, and she just blew poor Miss Elfman out of the water. She was incredible. And you realize, she has that all in her. And she was living in a car with her mom, in the downtown LA. And anytime she'd talk to you about something, there was an intensity that you knew this girl was going to make it. Right. Never thinking 3 Oscars or whatever the hell she's gotten. I mean, to get to that level. But but early on, you really could see, that certain people just, have that, I am going to do this, period.
And it's got to be so frustrating to an actor to know they have it in them and know that they could also miss the chance to show they have it in them just by happenstance, right? That's part of the dynamic that's why that Rick Dalton sequence where he's in the trailer beating up on himself.
Oh, yeah.
Once upon a time is so powerful, because then he goes out and nails it. But like the guy who was sitting next to the little actress, like she
Always gonna crush it.
Yeah, she's gonna be great. He's gonna be terrible.
Yeah.
Like totally rattled and insecure and like whatever.
What makes a good director's note? Like how do you, like when you're on set, you go for a take and it's not quite like what you want. How do you communicate that with an actor to like help them like get what you were seeing?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the $50 million question, and I get asked that all the time, especially teaching directors and producers and writers and actors and stuff. What that relationship's like. I mean, first and foremost, to me, it's setting a tone. That you come in and there's a sense of confidence that you know what you want, and when people say, well, what's going on here, ask the director, and you've got to have an answer. And the one thing I learned from Marty Scorsese once in an interview, he said, sometimes the answer is I don't know. And I'm gonna find out, and I'll get right back to you.
Right.
It's just that you've got to be that point person that everybody can come to and get an answer of some sort. And hopefully, if you've done your homework, you really do know exactly what you're talking about, and they're not going to suddenly blindside you with some question about something. But then, once you start letting them, let's just try one. You have any direction? No, let's just go with what you got. So basically, you're allowing the actor just to have the freedom of what they feel this character is. Sometimes that's so much better than what you thought you were going to have to direct them into, that it's just like, that's great, and that's all you need. Other times they've made some choice where they've made the words important, and we don't do that in life, unless you get very didactic and you don't want to listen to that person.
Right.
We talk very fast. I don't know what I'm going to say next is going to come out of my mouth. So they've got to get it to that level that it just sounds just natural. So sometimes, there is a simple note about, just go faster with that, or you got to pee really bad and you just want to get this conversation over so you can go, but you're not going to indicate any of that. But you just inside, it's like, let's go. Come on, let's just get the deal done. You might give some kind of crazy notion like that to get the result you want, but it's about not directing for results. He's happy. Let's just do the scene. Remember, you're happy. And it's like, how do you act happy? Fake. Or the actor has to somehow translate that into, okay, the day my daughter was born. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm good. Let's go. And then they bring that, into the scene. So it's a combination. If you work with actors who have different types of teachers, the Meisner technique compared to the Stanislavski technique, compared to the natural type actor. There's so many different ways a lot of actors come at it. You have to somehow know a little bit about all these different techniques so that you can somehow, orchestrate, what you want out of them. The tough thing comes that you've got three actors and they've all studied different types of acting. One is about the first take. I am going to be brilliant on the first take, and everyone you do after that, I'm going to go down.
Right.
Somebody else says I'll be terrible on the first take. By the time you get to 4 or 5, I've nailed it.
Right.
And then it's like, I can't do exactly the lines. I'm going to give you something close.
Sure.
Because somehow it's just going to sound too stiff. So you put 3 of these people together and trying to get this to work, is maddening.
Wait. Now I gotta know. Do you game this out in advance? Like, these 4 people are going to be amazing together, or do you just get the best person for each individual role and make it work?
We try in casting to get the best you possibly can, and lots of times you don't know what their background is. You don't know, their real, what they need to feel comfortable on the set.
Right.
But to me, that's, again, the director's job to go in there, keep the set quiet so that it's not like yelling and screaming and, stuff, so that they feel cocooned in this world where they can be free to go in and grab sometimes really dark emotions.
Yeah.
I mean, for whatever anybody felt about, Valerie Bertinelli from One Day at a Time and all that stuff she did. Mm-hmm. When we did this film called Murder of Innocence, and she had to play a character that was schizophrenic, psychotic, she was schizophrenic, obsessive compulsive, and manic depressive. And it's not like you play those things, but you just put yourself in a space where, when I do close on her eyes, I don't know what she was pulling from, but she looked like a terrified animal at times. And there were things that we had her do that she was just flat out, willing to do.
Wow.
And I mean, and it was like a TV movie for CBS. And like there was one scene where she had to be, totally naked on a floor at a college dorm, covered in raw meat. And I thought, is Valerie Bertinelli, the princess of television, going to do this? Yep. And she got down there and she did it. And so many things that were just, really difficult. Sure. And at the end of that piece, she has to go into a first grade classroom and shoot children,
right?
Which is what Laurie Dan, the real character, did.
Right.
And both of us had huge problems with that idea. So
Naturally.
I came up with a solution, which is, you're not doing this. This little girl who was teased and I built in this thing where she kept clenching her hand, like as a little kid when she got bothered. Mm-hmm. And so when we got to that scene, it was this little girl, and it would cut to, the little girl's hand clenching, and then you'd hear her, pow! So you only ended up seeing the aftermath, which was not that bloody or gory,
right.
but that she was someplace else when she was doing this. And that made it, for us, okay to do.
Right.
That being said, this was a Sunday night CBS movie. They were so afraid of it at a time when Senator Paul, I think it was Paul Simon actually, not the singer, but the senator, yes. Was going, now television movies are corrupting people. So CBS got afraid, put it on Wednesday night, no publicity. But I still feel it's like one of the most incredible roles she's ever done. Okay. And I'm very proud of the movie because I tried to filmatically do, schizophrenia and, obsessive compulsive and in the cutting, of it. So it's, you find from certain actors, you never expect them to have that kind of depth, in something.
So cool.
And somebody else like Diana Rigg, who I had the hots for, all through the Avengers and all the rest of that. She, somehow she wasn't that into this, I was doing a version of Turn of the Screw, the Innocents over there.
Yeah.
And she was just sort of phoning it in and being very theatrical. And I had to keep coming in and giving her notes, and she would just look at me like, you know who I am, Dame Diana Rigg.
Right.
But she eventually did it. She eventually, stopped being theatrical about it and, just did it. And I don't know if she was doing that because she didn't care or that she was just, being lazy and just kind of, going with whatever. But sometimes, that becomes a very hard job to take somebody that's like, how am I going to give a note to this person?
Wait, she was getting brandylitis. for sure, right?
Well, she showed up. She was total pro. She was, all that stuff. But again, it's just the choices, for how you portray the character. Somebody else might have been fine. Let's print it. Go. But I just
was really unorthodox in interviews, or she came off as really unorthodox in interviews. She had unusual answers to basic questions.
Yeah.
She didn't give cliche answers, so I can see. I can imagine her. That's really. So I saw a documentary on baseball of all things. I'm not a big baseball person at all, but there was a moment where they described the physics of it, and they were like, if you think about the physics of trying to accomplish hitting a ball going 100 miles an hour with something this thick, and it's not even doable. The more you talk about film directing, the more I feel like it's not even possible.
I know there's more things you got to plug in and delegate.
Because we've only really drilled down on the acting part of it, but you're doing that for everyone else on the set, right? Like you're doing it for the people, the cinematographer, and you're doing it for the music, and you're doing it for I can't even fathom.
Well, it's not. For me, it's not that hard if you, for one, have a working knowledge about what they have to do to accomplish things, how long certain things take, and so on.
Right.
But more importantly, when you're reading the script, I try to have a point of view about the whole, movie.
Right.
I mean, perfect, examples like, E.T., you never really saw the adults until Peter Coyote, came in and was a principal. You only saw them kind of from a kid's perspective or E.T.'s perspective.
Right.
Even when they weren't in the scenes, but you saw keys and feet and hands and stuff. Yep. Spielberg went in with a particular point of view. I try to look at, like I was talking about Murder of Innocence, that I want the film to feel like inside of Valerie's head. Right. So every department that I talk to make the lighting a little more jagged, make this a little darker, a little, make the composition a little off center, so you're trying to make every element feed into this overall look or theme, or tone
Sure.
with it. And once people, lock into that, they come to you and go, how about this idea? And you go, that's great, let's do that, And I love when everybody's contributing, because you want to hire people smarter and faster and just, more creative than you,
Right.
because it's going to make you look better. And second, it becomes our movie. It's not just this is what
so
the director wants. This is his movie.
Right.
It's like I want to hear people say, what we can do for this, And it's just great that everybody feels like they own a part of this. They're going to be proud to have their name on it,
Right.
not just it's another job and I'll get through it. What the hell? So and I think it's so crucial.
It's like you were saying about it, getting everyone to paint on the same canvas and have like a coherent work of art come out. I mean, that's just remarkable to think about it and coordinate it. But I love the idea of giving them a theme to work off, so their brain and their creativity steers into like a direction. Like, no, we're going to do a little repulsion here because it's like they're going to go, oh yeah, that's really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I try to do with actors is have a dinner, because lots of times you can't get them up for rehearsals,
Right.
because producers have to pay more to bring them in early, and they don't want to pay the money. So it's like, can I at least have a dinner with them?
Right,
It's
right.
yeah, we can do that. So that and in that dinner, we'll talk about everything other than the role.
Right.
Story. I'll open up about my childhood. Yeah, my mother had a mental breakdown when I was 11. What? Oh yeah, my childhood just went away. Suddenly, I had to be the head of the house, because my father had to work, and suddenly it's like, what happened with me? And suddenly, people would start opening up about all these different things. So I'm, taking all that in and going, okay, and I'm not going to use that, but I can bring up situations that personal that they could understand and relate to,
Sure.
If it made sense, for that
Sure.
kind of a thing. Or when I did The Unsaid with Andy Garcia, this is a very serious movie, very dark movie.
Right.
But when we got together, all we talked about was comedy, and I actually got hired because he goes, yeah, I want to do a comedy with you one day.
Right.
And so it was like, it made him feel comfortable. So, I mean, sometimes those weird things happen where you just want to feel you can trust this person and you have, similar likes.
Right.
But every so often when somebody gives you some bit of information and you can somehow, skew it, when you're giving that direction, sort of so it touches upon that,
Right.
that they understand that because, they've given you that part of themselves that maybe they wouldn't have talked about, before.
Right. And it's also leading by example. It's I'm not going to ask you to do something I won't do myself, because you're exposing a little personal information yourself, and they're inevitably going to be doing that at some point when they're pulling on stuff.
Exactly.
You're like, we're all doing this here, that's kind of mind blowing to me.
You want them just to be as vulnerable as possible, as tuned in, as you can possibly do, and all the distractions, don't distract them. They're in the head of that character,
Right.
and they're committing to that. And one of my favorite things is when I say cut, and I look over at the actor, and they're just sort of like, how was that?
Right.
They just went there.
Right.
Bonnie Bedelia used to call it, oh, that was church. That was church.
Oh, that's such.
You gotta love
love
that.
that.
And she was right.
Right.
She could actually stand next to herself and know when something just worked. She was that accomplished.
So cool.
That's
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I feel like that should be the end of this.
Yeah, that's church.
It's church.
That's church.
I love that.
That's incredible.
Well, this was great. This
Yeah,
was
that's.
fun.
My mind is blown. I'm just so.
I could go on for an hour, like 7 hours.
So for the listeners, the Blu-ray for Jason Lives is coming up in
Coming out in October, yeah.
How else can they support you? Look for things that are coming. Like what can? How do people help you accomplish more?
Okay. Well, the big thing, which obviously none of us know what's going to happen, is
Right.
the next Friday the 13th. And as a lot of people know, I wrote, another script called Jason Never Dies. And it's set in the winter. It's an all-female cast. These girls are classic smart-ass type characters.
Right.
Never heard about Jason before, when they came into this situation, so they're not going to be savvy like the kids were in Jason Lives.
Right.
And it's basically 13 years, because I'm very much about trying to find these somewhat, supernatural, mythic things that can happen.
Definitely.
1999, that he comes back, and he comes back from where I left him. So it's sort of a sequel to mine, but it also kind of is a standalone piece that if you never saw mine, it still would work for a modern audience. And if you are a huge Friday fan, you'll see so many things that, it's like, that are references to things that that you're hip to, and trying to make the kills, all that stuff, unique. Definitely. But the main thing is about, setting up, these, again, likable, but for a whole different reason of likable, and they're, in high school, so they're even younger, than before. So there's a little more brittleness to the humor and stuff. So that, I've written, I've got some incredible storyboards of the concept, which I'm finally going to be actually releasing these concept things, which will be on that cool DVD or the Blu-ray coming out. So I when they asked me about that, I went, I don't want to give it away. You know what? I want people to see this, good or bad, whatever the reaction is. Right. I do, kind of like to hear, the feedback.
You got your texture with the snow.
Right.
I think everything looks better in the snow. Batman Begins, 30 Days of Night. You put, and I think taking a horror icon and putting him in the snow. There's something creepy about snow because everything gets real silent.
Well, think of this too with the mask when he breathes, that fog, coming out is just really cool. Why
am I not watching this movie?
I know.
Now?
As soon as the lawsuit's over, I think LeBron. I think there was a rumor that LeBron James wanted to produce one. So we just gotta get. Now he's in LA. We're Ohio boys. We'll get him on the hook.
Yeah,
we know him. We'll get him on the horn.
We do not know.
Funny you should say that because literally my lawyer just sent that script to him. My script. I don't know if there's shit he can do about it. I know there was also, I think, Victor Miller who won the lawsuit initially. So he has the rights to remake. His Friday the 13th, he's considered the first one, but he doesn't have Jason.
You don't know if there's shit he can do about it. He did to the Golden State Warriors what you did to the Volkswagen Beetle. He can do this. If anyone can stake the Warriors, they can do anything.
I forget where I was going to go with that. Oh, we've had this weird. Because we just started picking up doing interviews again. We did interviews when we first started, and then we sort of went away because I don't know why. And then we just started bringing back interviews. But we've randomly had this weird Jason through line with all of our interviews. So we talked to Aaron Kuntz from Scare Package. He had a Jason tattoo. He was like, "Oh my god, I love Jason Lives." Then we talked to Todd Farmer, writer Jason X on Tuesday, and now we have you here. So I feel like what makes sense is I'll just pitch Victor Miller and be like, so like imagine Jason in the snow, and we'll get him on the hook. We'll figure something out. We'll Ocean's 11 it and get it get it in.
It's really hard for those of us who know Victor well and Sean. I mean, not like buddies, but I mean, we obviously know what each other has done and where. Right. So it's really hard to say, who's right and who's wrong.
Right.
But, it's more than just the money. I mean, because there's plenty of money for the rest of their lives and their children. I'm sure their children's children. Totally. But it's like a personal, war between them at this point about I want all the eggs. No, I want all the eggs. And somehow somebody's got to compromise at some point. So, whenever that happens,
I feel like the Gun Media, the game, the company who made the game, they really got the bad end of that stick. Right as that game came out, that thing happened, it just stopped everything.
But sometimes those things pick up their own momentum and it gets really weird. There's a great moment in there's a Charles Dickens novel, Bleak House, where it opens and there's this guy and he's going to a court and the court case has been running for 2 generations. He's literally the 3rd generation to go represent this 140-year-old running case. And they're like, why are we doing this? He's like, I don't know, but I'm not going to lose. And it becomes this thing. Like it's
I think the visual of Jason in the snow and the fog, the breath. I know. That's enough to sell almost anyone on.
Well, and also rolling the age back to the high school age, which is amazing, and it's the person that Jason Lives, amazing. And then also when you think about the fact that if you ask the typical horror fan if they were being honest, if they were using their inner voice, right, and you're like, okay, there's going to be another Friday. What are the odds that it's going to be something you're going to love or it's going to be great? I think all of them are going to feel like a coin flip, right? Because there's been so much hit or miss, not just in the movies, but also moments in the movies and how the timing of them, where this movie would have been great if it came out 8 years ago, but not like they're all this dialogue in their head, and now like this is a sure thing. Yeah, so this has got to happen now.
That's our goal.
There's one thing I'll share with you guys because I love you guys. You're so great. That I don't think I've told anybody of this yet. which is, obviously it's snow, obviously it's the winter. So what happens to Crystal Lake?
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Frozen over. So who's down there? So the way he gets out is going to be quite interesting. And the one thing that no one has done yet is Jason going after a victim across Crystal Lake and trying to get your footage and stuff. And he's coming, and it's like, holy shit! And they're getting up and falling and getting so it's it's something that we haven't seen yet.
And it writes itself. There's going to be an icicle kill at some point in time. There's got to be an icicle kill.
Or something.
And kids played actual hockey on the ice.
This is amazing. Well,
there's your comment.
But I think the thing is, you're right. I mean, just the visual of it. You just said it, and I'm seeing visuals, and I haven't seen this movie, but I'm seeing visuals. That's crazy.
You're right.
That's remarkable.
This is perfect.
And one quick plug.
Yes.
The Sloths, my band.
Yes.
They come back from the grave, which is the name of our album. So go on YouTube and just look up the Sloths, the band, not the cute little furry animals with 3 toes, and you'll kind of see the other side of my personality, which I never expected I would be doing in my 60s. What I did back in the 60s when I was a teenager. So, I'm pushing it to the edge of the envelope, but to me, that's awesome. What you got to do is pursue your dreams, guys. Whenever they happen, you don't know when it's going to be, but go for it, because sometimes they happen at the most unbelievable time in your life. But, never give them up.
That's amazing. What is that? So just give like the brief thing of the Sloths. So the Sloths is how many people?
Yeah, it depends. When we tour, sometimes it's 5 of us, or sometimes it's just 4 of us.
Okay.
But basically, we were a Sunset Strip group in the beginning of the whole Sunset Strip scene. With the Byrds, Love. Anybody that kind of played then in those, of course, the big one is the Doors. Sure. We were in a battle of the bands with the Doors. They won. We came in second. And I mean, all these things that happened during that time period were just amazing. But we were kids. I mean, we were underage, but we were still playing these clubs. And then the band kind of fell apart. And, literally 40-something years later, we find out that this little 45 called Making Love, which no record label would play or record station would play, because Making Love you couldn't say on the air. So it just, there was like maybe 100 of these 45s made and forgotten about. Then we learned in 2011 that one of them sold on eBay for $6,650. Wow. So all these music geeks, started going, who are these guys? Are they still alive? What, And so, we found out that it was like a kind of a cult hit of garage band, songs of that period that wasn't really attached to anybody, in terms of the rights. So, they had all these things they could put on these, what did they call them? Nuggets, I think was one of them. And then there was another series literally called Back from the Grave of, I think it went up volume 10 or something of all these kind of unreleased songs. And they had some interviews with us. We got to see each other after all these years.
Wow.
And then, I said, what would it be like to get together in a garage again? It's like, you kidding? It's like, why not? I mean, and that started, we went, into a garage in Tahunga where the drummer lived. We started, jamming. We were terrible. But after about 6-7 months, we got brave enough to say, let's do a club gig. Right. But we did it in San Diego, figuring, if we fail, no one's going to know. Nobody thought about cell phones. So, of course, we got taped and went on, and suddenly the band just kind of took off. It's like, here's all these, old fucks that are going back and playing harder and, more intense than they ever did when they were kids. And it just led to something like, 300 gigs I think we've done. And we did an album, music videos, all this crazy stuff. I've got, one of my Chapman students, editing, a music video right now to one of our songs because we can't get back together. Right. But, they're, kind of cutting together all the things from 2020 and the song that we did called I Want a New Life. So with, images of us doing that song. So it, it gives us a sense of kind of being relevant and, now and still, using the music that kind of were all born out of those mid 60s. So it's a strange career, which, pays nothing, but it's great to do.
But you're having a blast.
So wait a minute. I mean, there's like a glitch in the simulation, right? A band called the Sloths, 40 years between albums.
Yeah.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
First of all, that's amazing just in and of itself, right? And then the fact that like you bring this back and the 45s, that is mind-boggling to me that this is even a possibility that anyone could do after all that time passed.
Yeah, because if it was a different era, like the cassette tape would have withered away or something like that would have lasted.
Yeah, and I love stories like this. One of my favorite musicians is a guy named Rocky Erickson, and he's...
I know. We played with Rocky.
What?
We played with Rocky.
Because his comeback story was remarkable, right?
Yeah.
Like, what was it like to play with him?
It was great. I mean, we did. I mean, so many of these bands, like the Standells and all these people from that era.
Right.
We do these. We did this thing called Ponderosa Stomp in New Orleans, and it was all these acts that had like one-hit wonders and things.
Right.
And you're all getting together and you're looking at each other, going, "What the hell happened?" All these, you all like become our parents,
Right.
But everybody just when they got on stage, you just were back to where you were back in the day and doing it. So. Yeah, it was amazing. Everybody just like, steps up to the plate and does it. And for a generation that never saw like performing rock and roll acts, it was like a huge thing,
Sure.
Because you have to pay a lot to go see the Stones perform,
Right.
So, here it's like we're in bars and, club venues and all this stuff. And it's like up close and personal. And I do on stage magic stuff, special effects, costume changes to make it seem like period, things depending on songs. So I try to give you, an entire show, in some, dive bar. But to me, that's like kind of rock and roll. It's like
It's texture. It's all over the place.
it's texture. Yeah, come here, feel this. This is Velvet.
Feel this. That's amazing. And I mean, you've directed horror movies, and what'd you say? They paid $6,600, $500. They couldn't go one more to make it $6,600.
That's what I'm thinking.
What is wrong with these?
Throw it in there.
That is amazing. Okay, so you can download these. You can support the band. You can
the sloths.org. Sloths.org has all of our stuff, on it.
Amazing.
And then, as I said, YouTube, you find, good performances, bad performances. Everybody tapes everything, and it's on there. So, the music videos are cool. And a lot of, of the Friday people who are doing fan films now, putting our music, in there. Deborah Voorhees, who directed Fanboy 13. She's taking our song Haunted for her, her piece. We had something in one thing in Vengeance. And then in the Amityville Murders, which was like the prequel, Dan put in 2 songs in that particular film. So it's sort of like we're having this like, horror audience hearing us, but not even realizing, that like I'm the lead singer in the group.
Wow.
So.
That is so remarkable. I can't even wrap my brain around that is something that happens. That's absolutely amazing.
Jesus.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Support
thank you,
everything
guys.
he does.
I had a ball.
And this is amazing.
Thank you so much.
Sing the Grim Reaper more every day. Good for the bad, passing away. Sad to see they never achieved